welcome to People Are Everything, the show that's a bit like Desert Island Discs, but rather than bring music, I ask my guests to bring the 5 people that have shaped the person they are. And it's still bonus season. You can tell I'm quite excited about all this. It's really nice to build a body of content, to be honest. It's nice to look back over it and go, oh, yeah, I really enjoyed that. And it's no different for this sort of sequence. We've gone back to the format of firsts, but this time we're going to season 2. So I've picked 5 guests from season 2, and we are discussing who they've chosen first. And yet again, I'm sorry, it is definitely a prioritization thing. People keep saying to me, oh no, they're just random, or this, that, and the other. But I think being chosen first does matter. So, yeah, enjoy these. They're all so different, and some a little bit similar. But each has got a unique story to tell. So, yeah, enjoy. As before, I'll be popping up in between each clip and giving you my sort of reflective thoughts. But other than that, just sit back and enjoy it. See ya. Bye. So first up, we have Matt Ziegler. I'm a big fan of Matt's. I think he knows that now. I think we were actually becoming sort of podcasty friends. I love his show, Just Press Record. Please go and check that out. And I just really think he's a great guy. He's full of beans, full of energy. And his approach to his podcast was fabulous. He did it as kind of like a mixtape. And as he said on the podcast, he likes to start with, in true mixtape style, an absolute banger. And his absolute banger was his granddad, who he calls Pop Pop. And what a wonderful story. I mean, warm and sincere, funny, and, also ultimately quite tragic. I think he misses him terribly. And I think this segment is very much an homage to the great man that he was. So lots in this segment I think you're really going to love. So I'll just hand you over now to Matt Ziegler. All right then, Matt. Who is number 1 then?
And in the tradition of making a proper mixtape, when you're restricted to a few amount of songs, we got to follow the rules. You got to start with a banger. You want to not peak too early at the middle. You want to soften it and drop back in. And then you got to finish really strong so people remember it.
Okay,
so,
I'm ready.
All the rules apply here. So this is where we're starting, and this is a big one. So number 1, Pop Up, a.k.a. Nick the Bellis, a.k.a. Junie, a.k.a. Nick, a.k.a. Nicky, a.k.a. that guy. He's a real character. This is my grandfather, my Pop Up. We lost him last year, and is truly a remarkable man. So it's my brothers, or one of my brothers, and my wife, and we're seeing him at the nursing home, and he's lost the ability to speak. And this guy is just sitting there. He's been the life of the party our entire lives. Very compressed generations in my family. Like, I was at this guy's 50th birthday party. I was there when he was retired. When he goes into the hospital after he quits smoking to have his quadruple bypass surgery. Like, one of my favorite memories is we go to the hospital and they walk us in, and they open up the door to take us into the room. We're like the first people who are going to see him after this procedure outside of my gram. And they open the door, like the nurses, here he is. He just came out of surgery. He just woke up. Be quiet. And he's not in the bed. And we're like, nurse, he's not here. And then we hear his voice. And he's on the ground in the gurney with his butt hanging out in the air. And there's all these screws around him and all this metal panels and stuff. And we're like, Puff, what are you doing? And he had snuck out into the hallway, and he had stolen a maintenance person's tool belt. And there was a light above him in the ceiling in the hospital bed that was shining into his face and driving him crazy. So he stole a screwdriver, and he was literally taking apart the wall in the hospital that he had mapped the cord back to so he could unplug the light that was annoying him. And this is just the way this guy operated. And he thought this was hysterical. And the nurse is like, you can't be out of bed. And now we have to put this room back together and call the electrician. And he was like, well, maybe just make the light not shine on my face right now. And this
is amazing.
So we're in the nursing home. He can't talk. He can't make us laugh. And so we're just kind of doing that awkward silence thing that you do when somebody's in this position. He starts doing this thing. He's got his hand over his mouth, and he's going like this. And I'm like, I'm like, what are you doing? And he's just, and all of a sudden the eyes, like he does one of these, like where he looks up. And then I realized, I'm like, are you lighting a cigarette? Like, what are you miming? And then he big old smile on his face, and he just like goes like this. He just goes like, and like in the room, and it slays. Like we're all dying. Like we're all laughing so hard, and then we're all crying because even when the guy can't talk, he just wants to entertain this room around him. I think about this guy and how present he was in every single moment. I think about his combination of extreme OCD and ADHD, seeing that light in the wall and knowing he had to take it apart. Literally, like a month before he passed away, he got sick and passed away. I had to go get him out of a tree. He was 88 years old. He was in a tree with a chainsaw, and nobody could talk him out of the tree. I had to go support the ladder and get the man out of the tree with the chainsaw. And even then, he wanted to finish cutting stuff up. Extreme OCD and ADHD, but so focused on the moment and how he made other people feel in that moment, right down to his last days. He was trying to make us laugh. It's a beautiful, beautiful man.
I can just sense the energy that's coming off you talking about him. It's like you always feel people are going to be, I don't know, towards the end, they just lose their vitality. But he sounds like he never did. He just had it all the way through.
He told me in the nursing home, I wrote an essay about this. It's online. It's actually, I think I have it saved up on my LinkedIn. And he told me we didn't know if he would recover. It was before they found some other cancer that was spreading and some other stuff that was going on. And we're in the like the recovery part of the hospital. They were figuring out if he was eligible for a surgery or not. And we're sitting there, and I brought him coffee, and it's my gram, my wife, my Aunt Patty, they're all there. And he just like, we're sitting there, and he's just kind of looking out the window, and it's still sunny. And he was just like, all the light on a summer's day, it never ends. Best thing in the world. And like, I walked out of there thinking that, and still think of that, like brings a tear to my eye, chokes me up just thinking of it. It's just pure vitality all the way up until the end. So I got to tell you this too. So Graham, wonderful woman. She's still with us. She's the one who made this hat. One of one. Hat. She's still knitting those. She loves making stuff like that for the family. And then this sweatshirt that I'm wearing says Ocean City, New Jersey. This is where his ashes are buried, out to sea. Was just out there a couple of weeks ago with my wife to just pay our respects. Right before he died, I was there, the place he was going to be buried. I didn't know it. I took this picture of the sun right off this pier, and I went back, I showed it to my grandma. I was like, look, it looks like the hearts are in a cloud right over this thing. That's where we're burying your grandfather. Man. And so both of them remind me how important it is to be present and enjoy every single moment, even when the darkness is bearing down on you.
And do you feel like, I don't know, does he get bigger in your mind at certain moments in your life? Like, does he come to you when you're at your weakest or your fullest, or both?
He comes at both, and it's the reminder again about like, at the lowest point or the best, this guy always had a question. He always had something going on. He was always saying something outlandish. There was always a joke. There was always a song. There was always something in the moment. And I catch myself either when I'm doing something crazy and my wife will be like, that's a lot of puff-up right now. Make it like dial that back. Because she got to know him really well too. And he just shows up in that spirit. And I will, like every single morning, we see the sunrise on my block, and it's either I'm walking the dogs or dropping my wife to work. I go outside, and like that sun hits me on how it comes down, and I think of him, and it's just a reminder every time I see a bright sun that it's like, yeah, this guy's watching out for me, and it's just telling me to be present in that moment and make somebody else around me smile. And it doesn't matter how good or how bad anything's going. It's just like, yeah, what?
Just there, yeah.
Be present for a second, will you, man?
Yeah. And that idea of being present, I mean, I think we share the same love of this, which is this idea of really giving somebody your attention. Yeah. And this podcast and all podcasts, really, I think as a medium, people are really taking to them because people do want to get into things. They do want to listen to long form conversation. They do want to listen to people who are actually connecting and being real with each other for a moment. And it sounds like that's how he lived his life completely. And that combination of OCD and ADHD, wow, okay, that's a lot. I imagine he was quite a handful sometimes as well.
Oh, he was a handful. And there are a great many stories. Well, we will not spend the entire list talking about them, but rest assured, there are a great many stories. And his celebration of life, I mean, to see that many people in a room laughing and crying all next to each other, telling like, oh my God, you weren't at so-and-so's wedding. You never heard the time he did this, or I got a million of them. They're wonderful.
Well, before we move on to who's number 2, then I'd like to pause on that, because I talked to someone recently about, what's true legacy and, this right now. And I imagine, you talk about him all the time. And if I have an ambition with the people that I've sort of met along the way, I suppose I'd like to be mentioned once or twice after I'm gone. That would be quite nice. I'd like to feel like I've had a little bit of an effect on some people. Quite what they'd say, I don't know, but I hope it's something similar, actually.
I think about that a lot, and I think about like, it's not, he didn't leave a great inheritance or whatever, like something many people would look at, especially in my industry and my part of the world. It's like, that guy didn't leave, and I didn't want a dime from that guy. Like my cherished memories from him are like seeing, this is not to embarrass my grandma with this, but it would be like they'd get the coupons from the church to like pick up something from like the food pantry. It would be doing something special, and you'd get your stuff. And it'd be like, oh, we got our special stuff. And then they'd make it a point to like, before we moved back to this area, my youngest brother was always in the area. I have this video saved on my phone of being like, Pop-Up just dropped food pantry / groceries and random stuff. He's unpacking this bag, and it's like a random ham, a random pack of like canned thing of carrots. And he does the whole bag. He gets to the bottom. At the bottom of this bag is a single Lucy of his beer, of a can of Budweiser. And it's like, if all that guy left was that one video that I've had saved on my phone for like 7 years right now, because it's the funniest thing in the world to us. Where,
Amazing.
At the end of the day, he was like, to my brother Pat, make sure you got this loose Budweiser just in case you need it at all times. Stories. We'll always talk about that, man.
Yeah. And I know you're, we might come on to this. We might come on to some of your sort of writing that you do. But I know that storytelling and story making is quite a big sort of feature of the work that you do as well. All right. Well, listen, I love the sound of him. Nicky, whatever. He sounds great. May you rest in peace. Pop-Up.
Rest in peace, Pop-Up.
So that was Matt Ziegler. I hope you enjoyed that. Next up, we have Sophie Bryan. Sophie is an absolute firecracker. I just love talking to Sophie. She's funny, she's energetic, and quite risque, actually. She says things that, made me blush a couple of times during this episode. But very heartwarming that she wanted to choose as her first, her daughter. And what we come on to discuss is not so much, well, not just her daughter, who sounds amazing, but also how motherhood changed her, and the impact it continues to have on her life. So, enjoy this one. This is Sophie Bryan. So who made it first on the list? Tell me that.
Well, I think first and foremost, it had to be my daughter.
Oh, good.
So, Mila Victoria Bryan is her name. She's, as at the time of this recording, she is 12 years old. And of course, she has divined a massive part of me. She's the human, the energy, the soulful life form that has made me a mother. And I, in all honesty, never wanted to be a mum. I've never craved it. I never really had ambition as a young child to be a mum. Yes, I mean, I had dolls and things, but actually there was never this like, oh, I can't wait to be a mum feeling within me. And I think I'd grown up most of my life feeling like I wasn't very maternal. And my husband, now ex-husband, and I both decided, okay, let's do this as an experiment, shall we? Should we try for being parents? Let's see what happens. Neither of us really particularly attached to creating a family or not. Both of us were not really driven to create a huge family anyway, or even have children. But the timing felt right. I was 27 and I was at a pinnacle in my career. It felt like a good point to take some time out. And then she arrived almost 9 months later after having that discussion. I fell pregnant immediately. And I didn't have time to get my head around being a mum. And I thought, oh gosh, how am I going to do this? And then she arrived, and I guess I think all parents will say this: your life is never the same ever again, right?
Yeah.
And you have this small human in your world that you're now in charge of. But I mean, she's been in my life for 12 years now. There's many stories I could tell you about how she's changed me. However, I think if I could take maybe just a few kind of bullet points as to what having a daughter has meant for me, I think she has enabled me to access part of myself that I didn't know existed. There are things where she's tested me unbeknowingly to me and unbeknowing to her. This is like when she was an infant, or even as a toddler, where things have tested me, and I've had to take a step back and gone, oh, why have I been triggered in that way? Why is that me? Why is that upsetting me? Why am I getting emotional about this? So, I birthed her. I carried her for 9 months. I feel like there is such a huge extension of myself in her, and she reflects back to me parts of myself that I want to celebrate. And there are also deep parts of me that I am quite ashamed of, actually. And she mirrors them back at me. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is something that needs to be processed. This is something, childhood trauma, ancestral trauma, that I need to work through. And she's constantly playing that role for me. So this kind of light and mirror. I also think there is an element here of unconditional love that I didn't know I was ever going to have access to.
Mm-hmm.
I think a love between a child is unlike any other love you're ever going to experience. The love you give them, the love they give you back. And yeah, that changes you when you see that as an infant who is dependent on you, and that love that you just have to give in order to keep them alive. And then as they grow older and they start becoming little mini arseholes, and you're like, and I still, not that she was ever one of them. It was the other kids were the problem, not her. But
We're discussing all children now.
yeah, no, truly, my daughter is superior to everyone else. Believe. But you then get tested in other ways, and you are still showing up with that unconditional love. And so it's made me have a greater relationship with love, a greater understanding of love, a greater connection of humanity. And now, as a 12-year-old, I'm now a solo single parent taking care of her. It's just me and her in this life at the moment. And the bond that we have with each other is just continuously growing. And again, it's more sources of her shining light on my greatest strengths, but also my greatest weaknesses. So I feel like having her has enabled me to go through a very soulful project of finding myself in my whole entirety. So she has to be my number one.
Well, it sounds like she's performed so many sort of functions already in 12 years. Let's see what else she's got to offer. I mean, this unconditional love thing, I can totally relate to that. I remember when my daughter was born, I didn't, I was overwhelmed with it. I was just, you know my story a little bit. I didn't really know my own mother, and I didn't understand what the fuss was all about. Like, because people would say all the time, oh, you didn't have a mum. And I go, yeah. And I'll go like, so? And then you have your own child and you go, wow, okay, this is next level love. And I'm not sure it's unconditional in reverse. It's got plenty of conditions, that the bank of mum is always open, and the washing gets done at the weekends, and there's all kinds of conditions. But I know what you mean. Fundamentally, there's a love. There's no other love like it than between a parent and child. And I totally understand what you're saying about the reflecting back of you, the best and the worst. Like, it's very confronting, isn't it, being a parent, because you're growing up so fast yourself. Everyone thinks they're ready. I mean, you weren't at all prepared. 9 months. What were you thinking?
No, I wasn't.
Yeah, so it's like you were very unprepared. But I think even if you'd tried for a year or two and thought about nothing else, nothing can really prepare you for that moment.
There'd be swings and roundabouts, right? There's friends of mine that I know that are like 3 years in and still trying. right?
Yeah.
There's a pain of that, just as much as I feel really selfish that I'm complaining that, literally I was pregnant within 3 weeks.
Yeah.
How fortunate was I?
Yeah.
However, I wasn't ready to be a mum at that point. I hadn't mentally
Yeah.
prepared myself for that. I hadn't had the longing of every month being disappointed that I wasn't pregnant. Well, the real longing for when's it going to happen for me?
Yeah.
Handed. What I was going to say, there was something you said just a minute ago around the unconditional love piece. I think with this whole we grow up and we're growing up as adults as they're growing up as babies. I think the thing that happens with a parent-child relationship, as in a literal child rather than transactional analysis, is that we are playing our mistakes out live in real time. And that for me is like, I'm very hyper aware of that, right? Okay, I have literally just created a childhood trauma there. My lack of response or my response to that has now just completely fucked her up, and I'm very aware of these things and I'm conscious of it. And I think that's one of the hardest things as being a parent is, especially, if you're not aware of it, God knows what planet, where are you at with that? But when you are so consciously aware of, I shouldn't have responded like that, is that going to have messed her up in the future? Is that now a chink in her history? Because we all know our parents mess us up in some way, shape or form, right? It's impossible to get through your childhood. And even the people that haven't been messed up, in a way, have been messed up because their childhood was so perfect, right? So we never come out of our childhood.
Yeah.
And I'm always consciously thinking, was that the thing that's done it? Was me showing up in that way or not showing up in that way the thing that's done it? So playing out our mistakes in real live time, they're happening in front of you. Wow, what a journey that's taken me on.
Yeah, and make sure you put a huge dose of guilt in there, won't you, for yourself?
Right,
Is
guilt, really healthy dose of shame.
Yeah, chuck it all in.
And a big dose of self-loathing. Yeah.
That's motherhood. No, do you know, before we go on to number 2, I just want to say one thing. My daughter recently, you say about outworking something. She absolutely nailed it with regards to my lifelong, I don't know, there was a moment, my lifelong wanting and wishing to be bright and shiny for everybody, and just generally, I'm quite a fixer of things. If you've got a problem, I'll fix it. I'm like the A-team. I just thought of that. And you know what I mean? It's like I that was a nice, sorry about that. It's an 80s reference for everybody here over a certain age. Well,
God likes to use like B.A. Baracus.
B.A. Baracus with the chairs. I could do that. So, I've had this lifelong thing where I'm just this total pleaser. I want to be bright and shiny all the time, really, really helpful. And she called me, and I thought, I don't know, for some reason I thought she hadn't, kind of knew me but didn't know me really, because you know how children are very self-absorbed, aren't they? We all are when we were growing up. I thought she hadn't even really thought about me and my ways. And she said, the thing about you, Mum, is mostly we just want you to just be. When I phone you and say I want, I'm hurting in some way, I don't necessarily want you to fix it. I want you just to acknowledge it and just say, oh, I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry that's happened. And she said, she said these words. She said, I know that because of your childhood, you think we only love you because of what you do for us. But actually, we love you anyway. I was in bits. I was just like crying, going, oh my goodness, this, a child of mine. Okay, well, she's 23 now, but you know what I mean? She's still my baby. Like cutting right through the core of my biggest issue and just nailing it and reducing me to absolute tears. That's the power of that relationship. And that's what I meant by it being a healing thing. So anyway, we could talk about motherhood all day, but I'm sure there's other people we should meet on in your list. The lovely Sophie there. And yeah, as I said, lots of love there for her daughter Mila. Next we have Damien Beatons. Damien and I go way back. There's a familiarity between us that you'll recognise. But yeah, a wonderful first for him. He talks about his grandfather, who was an incredible adventurer. I don't want to spoil it. I think you should just listen, because you don't hear stories like this very often. And Damien has a particularly lovely voice. So I think, yeah, you're going to really like this one. See ya. So who you want to do first?
Well, I'm going to do my grandfather first. I've kind of got there in some kind of chronological order. But my grandfather was called James Nicholson. He was like the oldest child in a family of 7 who grew up on the Fish Quay in North Shields. So that must have been a really kind of tough environment. And for him to be the oldest in that family, I think there would have been a lot of kind of responsibilities on his shoulders. So he grew up on the Fish Quay. His dad had a pub, so it must have been a pretty rough and tumble environment for him. But when he was 17, he won a competition to go on a worldwide sort of schooner trip. So they left from North Shields and he won this competition, and off they were going to travel around the world. And I've got all the clippings on my wall in the house from him, from the local paper and everything. It's just so fantastic to look back on that. But what actually happened to him was they only got as far as the Scilly Isles, which is obviously a set of islands just off the coast of Cornwall, and he got shipwrecked.
Oh, no.
That's as far as they got. He got shipwrecked on the Scilly Isles, and that was the end of his worldwide trip on the schooner. But he was rescued by a lifeboat there, and he was taken back to St. Mary's, the main island, and he was looked after by a family there. So in terms of like navigating me, that was quite a significant thing in itself, because he used to take me down to the Scilly Isles when I was a kid. So he used to drive all the way from North Shields all the way down to Cornwall, Penzance, and then get the ferry over to the Scilly Isles. And I used to go and like essentially visit the people who looked after him and rescued him and what have you. So that was like a very significant place for me when I was a kid, and it's so beautiful and so unique. And he took me down there 3 or 4 times when I was a kid. But what also happened was that a few years ago, I took my kids there and we did the same journey. And what was amazing was I got in touch with the people at the hotel that we used to stay in the 1970s. And they said, "Oh, we're busy. Sorry, we can't, we haven't got space for you." I said, "Oh, that's a shame. I used to come down with my granddad in the 1970s. And he said, "Okay, let's have a look again." And basically they squeezed us into this hotel. So I went and stayed at the same hotel, which overlooks, the main bay in St. Mary's. And what was so interesting was it was like the grandchildren of the people who owned it. So it was the same family.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So we went and stayed in this same hotel with the same family, and just did that. It just felt like such a kind of experience to join up all those dots and weave that together. So that was like a very special thing for me. I'd always wanted to go back. I took my family, and it's just such a beautiful place. And it's got a massive place in my heart, and it's there because of him.
Isn't that amazing, that one defining moment? I mean, a huge moment. I mean, very few people experience a shipwreck, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And very few people, what was he, 17, did you say? Yeah. Just won a competition, get on a boat, let's go. We're going across the world. Yeah. Like no regard for the detail, just, a born adventurer, clearly.
Absolutely.
And then had that one singular dramatic experience that then led to generational impact.
Yeah.
And obviously for him to keep going back, it must have, because some people don't like to go back to the site of a trauma, because it would have been traumatic. Did he ever say about it? Did he say how it happened?
He never discussed anything like
the detail of it.
when we went back, to the Silly Isles this time, we went into the lifeboat station, and there's still a kind of plaque on the wall about his shipwreck.
Well, no way.
He showed me all those kind of things. There's a museum there with details about it. So we had kind of technical details about it. He showed me it. We talked about that, but he never talked about what that meant to him as a kind of personal impact, really, or emotionally or anything like that. I don't think my granddad would have spoken like that, really.
That generation didn't really.
Absolutely not. It was just like, hey, look.
Yeah, it was a shipwreck.
Hey, there's a plaque on the wall. Here's a newspaper article. Here's this. Here's that. It was just kind of like, just a regular kind of occurrence for him, I suppose.
Yeah, but it says so much about him in the not saying about it. That generation were very stoic. They were very pragmatic.
It was very
emotion wasn't talked about. No. Obviously in 2025, I'm sitting there going, well, how did it make him feel? Did he feel vulnerable? Did he feel it? And he'd have gone, no, I just had a shipwreck. The boat sank.
Yeah.
But on a significance level, he may not have discussed how it made him feel or what the experience was like, but clearly it had a big impact on him. Otherwise he wouldn't have kept that sort of story alive, and you wouldn't be keeping it alive today. And I was talking to someone in a recent podcast regarding storytelling and the power of storytelling and how it shapes us, and it's everything, isn't it? Like, we can get into this as deeply as you want, Damien, but it's like this whole idea of legacy and longevity. What is true? What is true legacy? And it's to be spoken of generations to come. Here we are talking about your grandfather. I imagine he's long gone now, and we're still telling the stories of his stories. And I love that. That's great.
My kids there, they were teenagers. Yeah, of course. Like, whatever.
Yeah, but when they're older.
When they're older, maybe they'll do that as well.
Well, I love it.
It's a very, very special place. Also, in terms of his legacy, is an interesting sort of way to think about it as well, because when I was kind of, I don't know, about 15 or 14 maybe, my kind of parents separated and we were left in the lurch as a family, and my granddad went back to work full time. So he'd retired and he went back to work full time and basically supported us and kept us in the house, gave us that kind of stability that we needed at the time. And so as well as navigating me to this incredible place, which is still part of my life and hopefully part of my kids' lives, he also did that kind of support. He gave me that support and created a legacy of stability that I think set me up at that point in my life in a way where, I wasn't doing very well at school, I wasn't doing very well at college, but it gave me enough to just have a platform just to sort of take those leaps, further down the line that I did. So I don't know, I'll always be incredibly grateful for that. So he's navigated me to the Silly Isles, which is there, but he also gave me the platform and pointed me in the right direction in terms of my personal life and my family life, and that I'll always be incredibly grateful for that.
Amazing.
And he's, that's what I needed in my life at the time, and he set me up and set me off in the right direction.
Nice. Well, good old James. I like the sound of him. Oh, the lovely Damien. I hope you enjoyed that. So next we have Lucy H. Pierce, who is an absolute firebrand. I love this episode. I wasn't sure what to expect with Lucy because there's so much about her. And as you'll come to hear, she's very forceful and very strong in her views, but so intelligent and articulate. And I learned heaps from her, absolute heaps. And she decided to approach her five as a bit educational. As she said right at the beginning, there's no point in me just listing my family members, although I would have loved that. She took it more as let me share the 5 people that have inspired me the most, and they're all pretty much literary people. So the first one she has is a lady called Judith Dirk, and you can tell that she had a massive influence on how Lucy now thinks and also her businesses, particularly womancraft. So, and there's a wonderful quote in the middle of this section that completely affected me and still does. So listen out for that and see if it has the same impact on you. So this is Lucy H. Pierce talking about Judith Dirk. All right, so let's get into it then. Why don't we start with number one?
All right. Number one is Judith Dirk. And I think I'm saying her name correctly because you're someone who was basically raised by wolves. I was raised by books. Obviously, I have two wonderful parents. I keep saying that, but I do. I am, as many autistic people are, I'm hyperlexic. I love to read. Reading is my way of gaining information, but it's also my way of soothing myself. And I'm really sorry, my husband's alerts are going off. Oh, don't worry, I'm turn them off.
If it doesn't distract you, it doesn't distract me.
And so for me, that is just, books are what made me. And if you were to ask me the 5 biggest books in my life, that I would spend forever trying to figure them out. But this first one is an author. And she is an author who was a major permission giver for me. So the book that most impacted me, I've read her other one, but it's called Circle of Stones. It's a really thin little volume. It's probably 70 pages long. And it starts with this inquiry. So each kind of 3rd or 4th page is an inquiry, and it's a kind of it goes on the same theme, so it repeats the question in a different way. So I'm going to read one of them to you. How might your life have been different if there had been a place for you to go, a place of women to help you learn the ways of women, a place where you were nurtured from an ancient flow, sustaining you and steadying you as you sought to become yourself, a place of women to help you find and trust the ancient flow already there within yourself, waiting to be released, a place of women. How might your life be different? And so that is the constant, how might your life be different? So this thinking of the way she joins the ancient past, which is both real and imagined, the fantastical and the real that we haven't heard much about, our reality now, which might be deficient of certain things, especially spaces to be ourselves, to be fully seen as we are, to express ourselves as we are, and then the future possibility of how might your life be different if you had that, if you created that for yourself and your community. So as you can see, that was a major influence for me and my work with womancraft, with my books, is this taking past, present, and future, mixing them in a crucible and saying, if you have the tools, if you have the motivation, how can you make the future different from your present and your past? And what might that look like if you were to vision that for yourself? What do you need? She's not telling you what you need. She's asking you what you need, and then asking you to provide that for yourself and your community. So for me, that was massive. So that in itself. So I was newly moved back to Ireland. I had a new baby. I was a new mum. And as many of us are when we're new parents, feeling very like completely new identity. Friends who don't have kids, suddenly I don't have so much in common with them. What do I do? Who are my friends? What do I do with my time? Now I'm not studying and working. And so I went to the Lecture League, which is a breastfeeding support group. And there we sat in circle and we kind of asked our questions and we shared how exhausted we were and how frustrated we were and how in love with our little children we were. And there were several women there who I felt I really connected with. But I'm not a good let's go and have coffee and socialize person. That is not in my skill set. I need some sort of a structure in order to be able to function socially with people. So I was reading this book at the time and I printed out a shorter version of one of those little invitations. And I said, would you like to come to my house this time, this place, to create a women's circle, a place for us? And so they said yes. And we are now 17 years into that women's circle.
Love it.
And the format of it has, ebbed and flowed and changed and evolved. We've had new women join us and other women leave us, but the majority of us are the same people who were there at the beginning. And that circle, that space has held us through relationship breakups, loss of jobs, more children, all the things that happen in life. We've had a place that we've been able to show up to and feel like we were listened to, held, understood, and didn't have to justify ourselves, didn't have to explain ourselves, just that people got us and were there for us and would support us practically if we needed it, but really would just listen. So it was massive for me and my life in general on that. It was massive for the foundation of Womancraft, that kind of idea of creating a space for women, for the emergent of women's culture. And then also just the way she wrote. I describe myself as genre non-conforming. She absolutely is too. So she wove these invitations with little bits of poetry, of snippets of dreams, scenes from her life, and bits of research. So if you've seen one of my books and you like the style, that's where I first saw that style really lived out, that you could put many pieces that don't normally belong together. And if you weave them right, if you have the themes and the energy flowing through it, then those pieces can go together. And we can know with more parts of ourselves than just the head that we engage when we read. We're engaging the heart, we're engaging the energy, we're engaging the fantasy self, the dreaming, the unconscious self. And all of those parts of us then are brought to the book, which makes it a much more powerful experience than just the intellectual. But the intellectual has to be there too. The research has to be there. The way that we're taught to learn in our culture, which is through the rational mind, has to be there. That's an important piece of the puzzle. So for me, she really showed me how that could be done effectively.
If we go right back to the first time you read that piece, I've never heard that piece before. I felt actually very emotional. I literally, it did something to me, because I think for all my posturing earlier about I wasn't affected by this, it was leading to me saying, and so, I so would have loved female energy in my life. Everybody I was friends with back then were men and boys. I wasn't comfortable around women at all. Didn't really know how to be with them because I didn't have a mother, and spent many years wasted actually trying to understand all these feelings and why I was both attracted to and repelled by all the sort of women in my life. And what I took from that piece was just imagine if you tapped into that, how different your life would have been. And I totally resonate with that sort of feeling of going into women's spaces, such as, post-birth mother and toddler groups and things like that, can be incredibly intimidating. And again, if you're not comfortable with women's energy, and if I link back again to what Callie was saying about the brokenness of women's connection in the burning times, we were taught to compete with each other, to lie to each other, to protect ourselves from each other,
to betray each other,
and
to betray your sister, to protect yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I was talking to a guy. I keep mentioning him. I think he probably feels he's I've got some kind of I don't know. He seems to pop up a lot in my podcast, but I met a guy called Jindy. I talk about him quite a lot. And what fascinates me by him is he's doing men's circles for safe spaces for men to speak. And it's only just occurred to me in what you just said was that women need safe places to speak amongst each other. Because again, going back to all that kind of betrayal and conditioning to the scarcity mentality that women have, finding an all-female group to feel comfortable in is incredibly difficult as well. You know, there are very few safe spaces for women to talk openly and honestly about how they truly feel. Like you say, you know, we lie to each other about how our motherhood. Oh, I'm loving it. Isn't it amazing? Oh my God, it was awful. Parts of it were so terrible, I can't tell you. And I kept that all to myself. You know, what it is to go through menopause. God, we're finally talking about it honestly. But also, I've never really experienced girl gangs before. I've never been in a girl group. And I find it very, very difficult. I find it incredibly difficult to feel totally relaxed in all female groups. And most of my friendships, when I think about it, my female friendships are individuals. They're not a group.
That's
So-
exactly what I was going to say. I had the
Yeah.
same. And from growing up, like I would always have a couple of really close female friends. But if I hung out in a group, it was always with a group of boys because
Yeah.
boys were safe to be with. They wouldn't get at you for this, that,
Yeah.
or the other. You could just be part of the group and do something. Whereas the girls would be cliquey and they'd be mean and they'd be judging you on this, about the other that you weren't even aware of,
Yeah.
especially as the autistic kid. And you'd be like, you know,
What's going on?
Yeah.
No, Lucy, honestly, I hear you. And I wonder if there's, it's talked about enough that because people automatically assume that women are good at talking. We're great communicators. We had to learn to communicate because we have to raise babies that don't even speak yet. So we're marvelous at seeing, interpreting and, human behavior. We're hardwired for it. Otherwise, our babies wouldn't get their needs met before they could even speak. So we're really good at communicating. But with everything else that's come into society, absolutely, we are not trusting of each other. And we're always credited with being able to speak our issues, and therefore, this assumption that men's mental health is affected by lack of communication, and women may have mental health issues as well, but it's not to do with being able to communicate our feelings. But actually, it is also probably under-discussed that, yes, men bottle things up, and I so wish that was different. I talk to my son all the time about open communication. But also, I think men do know how to find each other in safe spaces. I think they know how to make football clubs, and they know how to make team sports, and they know how to play golf, and they know how to band together in safe spaces where they are maybe mildly competitive, but not in the same way that women can be. They don't look to kind of tear into each other and fight for the scarcity of the resources of this world. So,
but I think that's because they don't have to fight for the resources.
Oh, absolutely, of course, it's a privilege.
Because
Definitely a privilege.
Men tend to be believed. I wrote a whole book called Medicine Woman about women in the medical system.
Yeah,
and how women's pain is not believed.
Absolutely.
How women. It's like there's study after study done on women's pain being underestimated by doctors, even though they have been told by the woman how excruciating it is underestimated. Women showing up with heart attacks, not tested for heart attack, whereas men automatically are, because women are disbelieved because we cry too much, or we're too emotional, or we're too dramatic, and therefore what we have to say isn't believed, whereas men don't have to go through that, jump through those hoops of belief in order to get to diagnosis or treatment or support in the same way.
But isn't it interesting? No, I know, and I we could do a whole podcast and never get through the 5 because we're just going to stay with Judith. But I do want to get through the 5. But it's like, and I suppose what I'm really trying to say is, however we get there, let's try and work out how we can communicate more kindly and supportively of each other as fellow women. How to hold each other up, advocate, allyship, everything, whether it's in the workplace, in our home life, in our personal, everything. We need to prioritize that. So good old Judith, I like the sound of that. I'm going to look into that more. Absolutely speaks to me, and as I say, when you first read that first piece, I was like, wow, that is something.
It still gets me. Like it was,
it's powerful.
Almost 20 years ago, I read that book. I've revisited it many times, and each time I read it aloud to myself or out loud to share, it pricks those tears of deep longing
And
and
loss.
recognition.
Yeah, yearning and loss and longing. I totally can relate to that. Well done, Lucy. I like that. First one is a tick. I told you she was a firebrand. I could listen to Lucy all day. It's an absolute education. Okay, last up, we have the glorious Chris Grimes. I'm a huge fan of Chris's. He's just interviewed Rob Brydon and John Cleese. So he's kind of in the podcast aspirational category for me. And I was actually a guest on his show, which was a real coup and a real treat. And I very much enjoyed it. In fact, I played it back to you all a couple of weeks ago. And I love Chris. He's got such great energy. And he chose as his first Stan Laurel. And like weirdly, before he even said Stan Laurel, I was thinking the whole time, you remind me of Stan Laurel. And he would take that as a massive compliment because Stan Laurel is his absolute comedy hero. And we have this wonderful conversation about just why, and we sort of reminisce a little bit here. But yeah, just enjoy it. Chris Grimes talking about Stan Laurel. Well, should we just get into it then? Tell us who's number one on the list.
Okay, number one, cashier number one. Coming in at number one is Stan Laurel.
Oh, okay.
Of Laurel and Hardy fame and beauty. Stan Laurel is my all-time comic hero. He's like a factory default setting of a serious happy place for me. Just his face makes me happy. I mentioned there's a gallery, people like Dick Van Dyke. I know Dick Van Dyke was asked by Stan Laurel if ever there was a biopic of his life, would he like to play him? My first ever theatre notice was wonderful comic timing with shades of Stan Laurel. So I took that compliment when I first did a Chekhov play. I was playing a hapless hypochondriac called Lomov. But anyway, why I love Stan Laurel so much is I was 7 years old and living in Uganda, and I lived in Uganda between my being 2.5 and 10. And round about 6-7 years old, there was a black and white TV set that hummed into action. And then onto the screen, traversing the screen, was Stan Laurel. And he just made me immediately happy. I mean, the duo is the partnership and the collaboration is so important because Laurel and Hardy are my perfect collaborative comedy duo, I think. But Stan Laurel particularly reminds me a bit of my grandfather. He's just very in my DNA. He reminds me to keep it kind, to keep it humble, to keep it funny, to keep it hapless. And I love slapstick, just the haplessness. And then when the brick sort of slaps Oliver Hardy on the head, if they're doing things in a chimney stack or whatever, the breaking of the fourth wall and, looking straight to camera as you share their pain. They just did it perfectly for me.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
To this day, Stan Laurel is like a Chris Grimes factory default setting of a serious, happy being an entity. And he's so informed. I mean, Laurel and Hardy, there are a couple of favourite films. I think it was County Hospital I first saw. But then there's a wonderful, wonderful one I've discovered and been reminded of. Laurel and Hardy's Brats is where they're playing their own children. And the technology of the day was they made these gargantuan props, so an extra large, chair, extra large bed, so they could become miniature. And it informed the comedy improvisation company that I now run called Instant Wit, which I've been doing for 35 years now. It's called Instant Wit, and there's a hilarious pun on Instant Whip. And the first ever photographs we ever did, inspired by Laurel and Hardy, is we miniaturized ourselves because of a hilarious pun of Instant Whip, Instant Wit, into a bowl of blancmange. And of course, that was all done with digital technology, and we just did a JPEG miniaturization. Whereas I was really enamored by the fact that back in the day, they would have made those enormous props. I was thinking macro when we went micro. So anyway, it's informed me in so many ways and keeps on doing it.
Oh, wonderful choice. Uganda. I didn't know about that. We're going to go on to Stan Laurel in a minute.
Yeah.
But I want to know about Uganda first because I didn't know that about you. What
you haven't asked before.
Oh, where did you grow up?
So I was born up north at a place near. When you talk about where you're born, you end up saying a bigger place, then get smaller. So I'll cut to. I was born in a place called Saltburn, which is close to Redcar, which is close to Middlesbrough, an area of which is called Northamptonshire, where my parents were from. And at my age equivalent of 28, and I'm 62 now, but my mum and dad emigrated to Uganda with 3 children under the age of 8, of which
Wow.
I was 1, to Uganda. And my dad was the first of his family to go to university. He achieved a bit of social mobility. My dad is going to be one of my people, but I'll tell you, I'll keep my powder dry about that. But yes, my dad was a teacher for the British Council, and between my being 2.5 and 10, I lived in Uganda. And then, if you those that know the history, it's just been recently the 50th anniversary of this, but we lived in a time of the political coup when Idi Amin overthrew Milton Obote. All the Ugandan Asians were kicked out of the country. And I was living in a place called Jinja, Jinja, which was 50 miles away from Kampala. And the fighting was getting closer and the disappearances were becoming more prevalent. And so it was a dangerous time. And so we got out of there lickety-split.
Wow.
So yes, it's very, very formative, very exciting time. By bizarre coincidence, I was also friends with the 2 younger brothers of Adrian Edmondson of,
Yes.
comic fame, because, his parents too were in Uganda as well at the same time.
Okay, fine. Well, I look forward to hearing a bit more about that when we speak about your dad. So back to Stan Laurel.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. I grew up, I'm a little bit younger than you, but I grew up with Laurel and Hardy. And I don't know, that there are still people with funny bones like that, people that you can just look at and laugh before they do anything. And I remember that famous sort of stage walk-on by Spike Milligan where the audience just laughed for minutes and he hadn't done anything yet because he just had funny bones. He walked on the stage and they just couldn't stop laughing. And I think Stan Laurel definitely had that. And I love, my favourite one was the one where they just ate the boiled eggs in hospital. I mean,
yes, that's County Hospital. That's the first
that's
film
the one
I
I
saw.
think. Yeah, and I'm just thinking, how if you said to a youngster now, we fell over ourselves when we were kids and still would now, about a guy just eating boiled eggs and putting salt and pepper on. I mean,
there's that famous line of hard-boiled eggs and nuts. We can't believe that he's come to hospital and brought him just hard-boiled eggs and nuts. And then he just doesn't give them to Oliver Hardy at all. He just sits there nomming them for himself.
it's just genius.
Beautiful comic business.
Absolute geniuses. Wonderful. Well done. Good opener. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little selection. As I say, it's really fascinating who people choose first. And we had some sort of similarities there, a couple of granddads. But, you can tell it's so random. People choose, that's what I love about this podcast. You never know who people are going to choose, who they're going to draw from their life and say, these are the people I want to talk about. These are the people I want to honour. So, like I keep saying, first is first and something about it. So I'm going to do another one of these next week with more firsts from 5 more of my guests. Until then, have a wonderful week and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.